actually avoid a request for evidence in your marriage adjustment of status case. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to look out for to completely minimize the chance of the USCIS delaying your case. We've helped so many couples navigate this journey effectively by avoiding issues like this. Just like Felipe and Patrick followed our process to get their green card in slightly over 2 months with 0 delays. If you're struggling to find the right solution for your marriage green card needs, you can speak to us directly by using the link in the description below. Look, the biggest desire every couple has going through the green card process is not to make mistakes that will delay their case. So the ultimate question is, how do I avoid a request for evidence in my case? And is it even possible or within my control to avoid it? To be completely honest, with how many mistakes the USCIS makes on their end, it's not necessarily possible to avoid it, but there are a few places where you need to pay special attention that will at least help you prevent your own mistakes or the mistakes of whoever is helping you handle your case, whether that's an immigration attorney or anyone else. First things first, you need to ensure you include proper translations with your application. It sounds so simple and straightforward, and yet we have a member of our marriage immigration method who went through a law firm when they needed to do the advanced parole to gain lawful admission to then apply for their marriage green card inside the US. DACA recipients watching this will know exactly what I'm talking about. But the law firm failed to include translations, which triggered a request for evidence and substantially delayed the case, so no one is immune from this one. Just know that if any documents are not in English, you need to provide certified translations. This includes birth certificates, marriage certificates, police records, and any other relevant documents. Even your bona fide marriage evidence. If, let's say, you text in Spanish and you want to use it as evidence, it must be translated. Incomplete or missing translations will 100% trigger an RFE, and you would be surprised how many applicants are unaware of this simple requirement. Second, you need to submit your medical examination with your initial application. Make sure to complete and submit Form I-693 in a timely manner. Ensure the form is properly filled out and signed by a USCIS designated civil surgeon. You really do need to check that the doctor filled out the form correctly, dated and signed it, and included every page of the form. Delays or errors in the medical exam report are a very common reason for an RFE, specifically the missing pages and doctor's signatures. You also need to make sure the doctor used the latest edition of the form, since the USCIS randomly updates their forms without a proper warning. Keep in mind, your medical exam will be in a sealed envelope, and you need to mail it to the USCIS. That way, it has to be sealed, but you should 100% ask your doctor for a copy so you can ensure everything is good to go. Plus, an RFE is one thing, but there is nothing worse than being called for an interview, which takes forever, and then at the interview, the officer discovers the mistake, which then causes an additional post-interview delay, and that can take many months to resolve itself. Third, you absolutely have to address financial support thoroughly. Form I-864 is no joke, and that's one form that you have to take very seriously, which means properly completing this form and keeping in mind everything on that form changes drastically depending on your particular situation. Sometimes you need to include 2 I-864 forms. Sometimes you can use the immigrant's income on that form. Sometimes you can use income of other household members, but they need to include additional form I-864A. It's intentionally confusing, and this form causes the highest number of RFEs. Again, sometimes deserved if you legitimately made a mistake, but more often than not undeserved when we had members who had made no mistakes and made over $200,000 and still got an RFE saying that the sponsor didn't qualify to be a sponsor based on income. You need to provide a complete and correctly filled out Form I-864, including all required financial documentation such as tax records, W-2s, and proof of income. That's another thing that makes this form challenging. If your situation is slightly different, let's say you are self-employed, it's as if the USCIS right away doesn't know how to handle it, and so they issue an RFE, a very generic RFE with a copy-paste language, and you don't know what you did wrong. That's why it's important to overwhelm them with your financial documentation rather than send less. Fourth, it's pretty much always a good idea to include a cover letter and an index of the documents you're providing. This helps USCIS officers easily navigate the application and understand the evidence presented, potentially reducing the need for an RFE. You know, since your application will consist of hundreds of pages, it's easy even for you to get lost in it and miss a signature or something small. So we use cover letters to also organize ourselves. Plus, officers are loaded with cases, so the faster and clearer you can present your case to the officer, the easier it is to minimize the risk of error and thus an RFE on their part. Next, you need to include evidentiary photos. Since we get so many questions about photos, I think it's important to make this point here. Submit a variety of photos that depict you together in different settings, such as family gatherings, vacations, and daily activities. Photos with friends and family can help demonstrate the bona fide nature of your relationship as well. It can be a beautiful collage prepared in Canva or just photos printed on a Word document with a brief description. Just don't overthink this, okay? And don't get too hung up on it. It's an important piece of evidence and should be included with your initial application 100%, but there are other more important documents you should focus on as a part of your bona fide marriage evidence as well. Plus, you can watch a detailed video on the photos here. 6. If you want to avoid an RFE, you need to ensure that you provide consistent information across all the forms. It sounds so simple. When you prepare so many different forms, it's easy to get lost in all of that information. So please ensure consistency in personal information across all forms and documents. Discrepancies in names, addresses, or dates between different forms can lead to an RFE. For example, if the spouse has changed their name, ensure this is reflected consistently across all submitted documents and that you are providing the required paperwork to demonstrate the name change. We're about to start talking about the bona fide marriage evidence, so definitely get our free list in the description of this video for some great examples of what you need to include with your application. The reason why it's important is because the USCIS is issuing a ton of RFEs and even notices of intent to deny when insufficient relationship evidence is provided with your initial application, and it's the biggest part of your application anyway, so you will be focusing on that big time. So let's get right into it. It's always a good idea to provide a detailed timeline of your relationship, including how and when you met, significant events, and how the relationship developed. The easiest way to do it is actually through a photo collage. Members of our method love sharing the whole story through pictures, plus a little bit of text. Keep in mind, there are some circumstances where you absolutely have to explain your situation. For example, let's say you aren't living together at the moment for a valid reason. That is different, and it's a separate personal statement that you would want to prepare in this case. It's not a requirement, but is something you would want to include in order to address whatever issues you think should be addressed. This leads me to my next point, which is the importance of including proof of shared address. We're talking about joint lease or mortgage agreements, utility bills, and correspondence addressed to both spouses at the same address. This helps establish the legitimacy of the marital relationship and is something the USCIS absolutely wants to see. Not including this information can raise red flags and trigger requests for evidence or a notice of intent to deny, depending on how much and what type of other evidence you've provided. It's also a good idea to provide evidence of communication between spouses, such as emails, chat logs, phone records, and social media interactions. This simply demonstrates an ongoing and genuine relationship, and that's the whole point. Plus, including travel itineraries, boarding passes, and photos from trips taken together, which in combination with your photos make it a very strong evidence. This can help show that you spend time together and engage in typical marital activities. Also, don't forget about third-party affidavits, which we have a separate video on, and the biggest thing are your joint financial accounts. So bank statements, joint credit card statements, and joint insurance policies. These documents help show financial interdependence, which is a key indicator of a bona fide marriage. Final point, you have to double check that the right person signs and dates each form, that you're using the latest edition of each form. You need to check it right before you ship it off because the USCIS can randomly update the form way before it expires, and that will cause an RFE or even worse, a rejection of the entire application. Plus the filing fees. This is the biggest reason for applications to get rejected, and it will take you weeks to get your file back and refile. We talk about it in great detail in our top tricks to speed up your case video. It's pure gold, so definitely check it out. So, can you avoid an RFE? No. There is always a risk, but following the best practices can greatly reduce the chances. Now, like this video, and we'll see you next time.